you have to be able to accept their belief system as different than yours. I mean, that's high level stuff. Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast for conscious, cycle-breaking parents ready to turn toddler tantrums into teachable moments. Hi, I'm Cara Tyrrell, a lifetime lover of littles, mom to 2 grown and flown girls, and an early childhood educator. Through the show, I teach you my collaborative parenting methodology for nurturing your little human's mind, body, and spirit. Because how you connect and collaborate in the first 5 years is how you raise happy, healthy kids who grow into the best version of themselves and find true success in school and life. Jamie, welcome back to the show. I don't often get to say those words.
I know, I'm super excited. Thank you for having me again.
What an amazing blessing to work with a mom like you over this length of time. And so we can continue to see where you're doing your big work, where your kiddo is growing and evolving. What is going on right now? Tell us how old he is now and like what level of development he's achieving.
So he is going to be 4 in 3 months, which is crazy to think about. I'm like, how did this happen? And I keep getting baby photos popping up. I'm like, what happened to my little guy? What happened here? And he is such a smart kid, and clever as can be and tricky as a result. Because when they're smart, they start to connect things and go, oh, wait a second. So if I do this, this will happen. So a good example is if we're like, hey, you can't have whipped cream until you have some chicken nugget. He'll eat a bite of the chicken nugget and then put it behind his back and be like, it's all gone, Mom. All gone. You can't see it. It's all gone. I ate it. So, it's that type of stuff that he's really like, you can see like, oh, the connections are there. And he's been in preschool. Mm-hmm. So when we last talked, he was very nonverbal. I think when we talked, he was maybe 2 or 3 words. He's progressed incredibly. However, he's only progressed with adults he trusts. It's fascinating. So we just had parent-teacher conference this week, including his speech therapist. And, they both were like, he will not interact with his peers verbally. He's got all the words. I mean, the kid will repeat something like extraordinary when I say it, and he will repeat it over and over and over again until he's like, okay, I think I've got this now. And he uses big words on his own too, where you're like, where'd you get that word from? So it's interesting to see that he's not interacting with his peer group. But one of the things that I've also noticed is that, and the teachers reflected back, is he relies on adults to do the hard things. I'm putting that in quotes because it's actually super easy for him to do. Like, he can do it. He just chooses not to and would rather have an adult do it. And so that's why we're here, is that they had suggested reward charts, which I've always been hesitant about because I've seen positive things, but I've also seen negative things come from them, right? Like my nephew out-tripped my sister with potty training because he would get a piece of candy every time. So he would go to the potty all day long. I'd be like, Mom, I sat on the potty. Right? And I look at, so for some context for people, is I'm a coach myself, and I look at kind of the structure of how we reward people a lot in terms of my corporate coaching side of things, because we need acknowledgement, but rewarding isn't always satisfying. It's not always what we need. And so I have this mixed thing in my head of like, do we do rewards for certain things? Like getting dressed. I've had to get him dressed every day. And it all of a sudden hit me. I was like, wait a second. In our parent teacher conferences, I was like, he should be able to do this by now, shouldn't he? And they were like, yeah, he's playing you. And I was like, oh, wait a second. And so that's what they were suggesting is, start using reward charts for things like getting dressed or trying the potty. Those were the main ones that we talked about.
Oh, this is so helpful. So just for a little frame of reference for people who are meeting you for the first time, and go ahead and go back and listen to Jamie's initial coaching episode on the show, and you'll see the transformation. But this kiddo was a COVID baby. He struggled with, when we first met, his struggle was going out into the world and being social in a group of other people his own age. And so to hear you say that social interaction with his peers is hard does not surprise me. It's always been hard for him. And now, but to hear you say that his language has exploded, that's great. And that he does have some trusted adults in his life, that's also fantastic. One thing I want to say about the communication piece, and you know this, is that talking and communicating are two different things. We can talk all day. I talk to myself constantly while I'm working, right? Because I'm in a solo bubble, but I'm not actually communicating a meaning-based statement with somebody and expecting that they are going to have a response. And it sounds like what he's struggling with is when I speak to my peers, their responses are completely unexpected. I don't know how to process what my same age peers are throwing back at me. And if I don't know that, I'm uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable, I don't know what to say or do next. And then that can very easily turn into an overwhelm of emotion. And when that happens inside tiny people is when they either melt down or outburst. So does that land? Does that sound
It does land. And it also makes sense as to like how he's showing up even in like the circle time where they're supposed to interact and with the teacher and answer questions, right? It's like he will not do a thumbs up or thumbs down. He will point to the picture. Even though all of us know he can say yes or no, right? I mean, the kid knows how to say the word favorite, so he's got the words. But that totally makes sense that he's having that struggle of how is this going to be received, and when it gets received, what do I do with it?
Which is step one of the very complicated, many layered experience of interacting with another human being. Because then the next step is if their response is not only unexpected, but different than how you believe things to be, you have to be able to accept their belief system as different than yours. I mean, that's high level stuff. Yeah. And this is why preschoolers very often struggle, especially nowadays with our 3 and 4-year-olds who didn't have a lot of that practice early on in kind of, now I'm air quoting, these safer social scenarios, right? At 9 months old at the play group where the biggest problem is she had the red thing. So, yeah. We're making up for that. Cara here, just hopping in to say how impressed I am by you and your dedication to raise a whole child who will be world and school ready. You know that parenting is a job, a J-O-B job, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to know what you don't know. And that's what I'm here for. My Transforming the Toddler Years course is currently closed, but I am accepting one-on-one clients who are looking to make massive transformation inside their home. If you're feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, and that you're in survival mode all day, every day, but you wake up determined to be intentional, calm, and connected so that you can help your child thrive, I can help. Schedule a complimentary connection call with the link in the show notes to share your parenting journey and your current struggles. Let's see how we can work together to help you transform the toddler years. All right, so to your actual question about reward charts. Like most everything, with small people in my life, I don't believe anything is inherently right or wrong, good or evil. I believe that they're tools to be used when they align with the general being of the person that you're dealing with. So, for example, there was a small human in my life named Kate. For the longest time, I was blessed to be her nanny, and she was strong-willed. She was the kid who always had to be in charge, right? Mm-hmm. Her plans were the right plans and the best plans. And so, to your point about rewards come from inside of us, that we're intrinsically motivated to do something because we want to feel that sense of achievement. Reward charts worked for her because I included her in the building of the reward system. We didn't just go pick one off the shelf and slap it on the wall. It was highly personalized and allowed her to pick the reward.
That makes sense because the reason why they suggested it was like, he really responds to rewards. You do this, you get this. You do this, and he does. He will eat a chicken nugget if I say he's going to get more ketchup afterwards. Because he is still in the I love sauce phase. And so he will just take, the ketchup and lick it off the plate. I don't understand it, but hey, whatever. If I can get food down him, I'm cool. But that
makes toddler phase, the I love sauce phase.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it comes and goes and you're just like, what? And it's different sauce every time. You're like, I don't get it. I do get it because I love sauce too. Mm-hmm. I digress. But it makes sense to kind of incorporate him into the like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And we're doing that with, he's going to be a big brother and he's moving rooms. And so I've been incorporating him into like, hey, what should we have for your brother's room? Should it be dinosaurs or whales? And when we were talking about communication versus talking, this is what showed up for me. He went whales. And then, a week or two later, we were at his grandma's house and he's like, my room's going to be whales. Like, oh no. Mm-hmm. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. But I was able to break it down for him and ask him like, because he's a car kid. For context for everybody on the show, he is a car kid through and through and through. Whales seems like completely out of left field. And so I asked him, I was like, did you only pick whales because you had two options, dinosaur and whales? If I add a third option, cars for your room, what would you pick? He said cars and whales. I was like, okay, cool.
I like that. Right? Yeah. It's cool to see that expansion coming from him, that he's not so tunnel vision, just the one thing anymore. He's looking at the other possibilities. So when you're talking, I want to be sure that we're 100% clear about the difference between a reward and an instant gratification.
Okay.
If you eat this, I give you this. That is an instant gratification reward, right? That's the carrot and the stick.
Yeah.
The Pavlovian piece. And that has its place. What you want, what I feel like you're telling me you want, is to help him develop that inner muscle of, I'm going to do the thing that feels hard or the thing that I don't actually want to do right now because I know eventually I will get the thing I want. And then that turns into long game when you work that inner muscle of motivation. It turns into that determination, that perseverance, that resilience that we want to build in kids who get older and bigger and become young adults who are like, I can do this hard thing. And the achievement ends up not being a physical reward in the end. It ends up being they got the grade they wanted. They got the job they were trying to get. They learned something new about themselves. So that's kind of the high, long level view. And knowing you the way I do, is that an accurate assessment?
That's totally accurate. Yeah. And I think that's why I've been so resistant to reward charts, is that it's like, oh, I don't want to build that instant gratification piece, because then we're stuck in a whole nother cycle.
Right.
Which we will have plenty of times to deal with that with when he's a teenager.
So
so
here's the great news. He's not 2 anymore. Okay. He's turning 4, which means that that beautiful brain of his has so much more expansiveness to work with. So we don't have to do an instant. We can do a moderate gratification plan and build it with him. Is it okay if I use his name?
Yeah, that's
okay. Tucker, your teacher helped me realize that 3-year-olds get themselves dressed before they go to school. I didn't know that. It's so okay to throw yourself on the mama sword.
Yeah.
They love that.
Oh, I do that all the time.
They love that you don't know. I didn't know that. This is something that we need to work on. Now, before I keep going, and you know this, working on multiple things at once is fruitless, especially for a kid who's going to have to put all his energy and use all of that, that stuff that's hard into being successful at this thing. So if getting dressed is, I'm going to use it as the example, but you're going to pick the thing that really matters to you. Your teacher helped me understand that it's your job to get dressed before school. We're going to work on this together. I wonder if you are able to get dressed by yourself every day for, pick a number, 2, 3, 4 days. How many days does he go to school?
He goes 5 days.
He does go 5. So a 5-day stretch is probably a long time for him right now, especially since he's used to the instant, here you go, here you go. So maybe it's 3.
Okay.
So if you're able to get dressed by yourself for 3 days in a row, I wonder what would feel like a really good celebration to you. Have him fill in those blanks, because rewards are really celebrations. We have these physical items that we attach, but the celebration behind the item is you did it. So, and we've talked about this before in the world of gift giving. That celebration can be an experience. It doesn't have to be a thing. It can be. It totally can be. And you could also use this as a gateway when you're out in the world and he's like, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. Oh, that looks really good for me to bring home and own. Say, wow, that could be one of your celebrations. Let's take a picture of it, right? Let's take a picture of it. I'll keep it in my notes. And next time you earn a celebration reward, that might be it.
That is awesome. I love that, because that's a great way of doing it. He loves things. I mean, he is a boy of just toys, 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 toys. He hasn't quite understood that experiences can be part of this.
Right.
So that's the question that shows up for me is, how can I offer up to him like that, adding that expansion?
Mm-hmm.
So like he comes to me and says, he comes back and says, celebration, I want a Hot Wheel car. Okay, great. I've been trying to expand him a little bit more with like the question I gave him about his room, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, you've got 3 options. Which of these would you like? Is that a way to frame it as like, hey, you've got a couple of different ways to look at this, or is that going to be too overwhelming?
No, I think that's fantastic, but and we're not going to leave it open-ended, Jamie. So when you're creating the plan with him right out of the gate, this is the goal. And have you heard of, I'm sure you have, SMART goals?
Yes.
Yeah. This is essentially the toddler version of a SMART goal.
Okay.
We have the outcome. It's quantifiable. because we know how many days in a row this is happening. It's clear if it does or doesn't. And that celebration will be pre-decided. But you could create kind of a 3-pronged, or you could make it 2, keep it moderate for him right now if you want. And go ahead and use that positive completion language, right? When you get dressed for 3 days in a row all by yourself, because maybe it's not these 3 days. Maybe it's one day and then not. And then the 3 happens in the second try.
Yeah.
Right? When you get dressed for 3 days in a row all by yourself, what type of celebration would you like to do? Would you like to have an experience with mom and dad? And you can have examples of those there. Or would you like a toy? Right? So you're expanding the options, and you can take it even more granular if you want and have that experience pre-chosen by you. When you blah, 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 would you like to celebrate by going to McDonald's for chicken nuggets with mom and dad? That's an experience.
Right.
Or getting a Matchbox toy.
Okay. I love that. Because then he can choose in that room, and he can choose differently each time, which is great. Because then he may be like, no, I haven't hung out with mom and dad in a while. I want to go hang out with mom and dad. Or he may actually just say mom right now. Poor dad. I want you.
Well, you could say after, so when he does it, and you're like, oh my gosh, you did it. It's time for celebration. On Tuesday after school, we're going to go to McDonald's and have our chicken nuggets together. Is it okay if we invite dad? I think he'd really like to come with us.
Yeah.
Build it in. Bring him along.
Yeah.
He's your +1.
Yeah. He's definitely, it's for those that are listening, I'm pregnant. And so he is very much in the mom. And he loves dad. But, if he's asking for mom and dad shows up.
Yes.
I love that, like the framing that you just put around the reward system as being, and I don't know how I didn't think of this myself, but being about the celebration, because that's what I talk about all the time. Is like, celebrate your accomplishments. That's why I don't like SMART goals for adults, because usually we actually don't use them the way you just described them. Right? In a way that is actually tangible and something that is, hey, I did this. It's short enough so I know I can accomplish it and move forward. But I love that framing up of things for him, and the titration, because I was going to do 5 days. I was like, okay, 5 days, but you're right. That's probably too much for him at this point. It'd be too like that.
Right. And you're a graduate of my Transforming the Toddler Years course. And so you've heard me say more times than you'd like to that our goal is always to set reasonable and achievable goals for our kids. If they're not attainable, then they can't work that muscle.
Yeah.
And they're so young that they need to feel, I did it. It's interesting because we always say how kids are incredibly bounce back, right? That's what they're capable of doing. You give them hard stuff, they can bounce back. It's true. However, what's also true, and even more important, is those positive dopamine hits, right? It takes 5 positive experiences, hearing 5 positive phrases. It's 5 to 1, 5 positive to negate 1 negative. That's the science of it. So if we have kids who we're asking to do more than they're capable of doing at that current age or stage, they could, even though they might not be showing you their overwhelm, their anger, their frustration, or that inside feeling of, oh, I didn't meet the mark. Oop, I failed again. Well, that didn't work out. Oh, I'm wrong again. All of those inner thoughts and feelings, they absorb and stick
Yeah.
I did an activity once with teenagers where I had them come into the middle of the room, like 5 of them, and become the physical brain. And
Hmm.
I gave everybody else little pieces of paper that had sentences on them. And if they were negative sentences, they had to read them out loud and come stick to the brain. And if they were positive, they approached the brain, but they got bounced back and had to walk back away. And they were all like, is that real? Like, it is. It
Yeah.
is real. And so that positive, that success moment, we need to have those on repeat.
Ooh. It's interesting because you say that, and I think I just did a post on affirmations and why they don't work. And that's totally what's coming up is like, yeah, we've got so much negativity going through our heads because as we grow, that happens. And that makes sense, the bounce back. It also makes sense as to why he's shutting down in those group settings even more because he's stagnating. And that's what the teachers are worried about is he's not even like progressing a little bit. It's like flatline. He might be so afraid of making a mistake that he's overwhelmed and then shutting down.
Yes. And something else I know about Tucker's experience is that in the beginning of his preschool experience, it was a fairly small group, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it still is.
Okay.
Still, it's 15 kids, but there's like always about 4 to 5 adults.
So but I have something to say about that social piece, but before I go there, as far as the reward, I wouldn't use a chart,
Okay.
not for this skill, right? The more we can use communication, because that is what he needs to be working on, and internal motivation to reach the goal that as a team you have decided will be the celebration reward, the better. When it comes in future to like when he gets good at that,
Yeah.
right? When he's practiced that a bit, if you have a short-term goal that has to be met in order for the next thing to happen in the world, I'm going to flash you forward and you can be like, whoa, right? Potty training has to be mastered by X day because they won't take you into kindergarten if you're not, whatever that, some schools are like that. Once he's practiced this for 9 months or so, you could probably put a sticker chart into place. But it's because he understands the foundations of how that system inside his heart and his head now work.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense because it's allowing him to connect this first step to this is about inside me and not about outside me.
Right. The outside me is a reflection of what inside me chose to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I had so many problems with charts myself as an adult, right? Like checking things off, it would get overwhelming.
And also, if you look at the inverse of that, so say the chart is on the wall, but the goal was set too big, not reasonable or achievable. And so instead of seeing a full line of star stickers, you see 3, but what the kid really sees are all the blank spots. And those are oh, I didn't do it.
I get stuck in the brain. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, we have so many. Mind is blown. Okay,
Yes.
that's job well done. Yeah. And then when it comes to the social piece, as a teacher, I totally understand why his teachers are bringing this to you. They're doing their job exactly right. Since Tucker shows affinity with adults, I wonder if there is a middle ground in a 3rd or a 4th grader that you either can make a connection with, that you know a parent of, who's like kind, generous, all those those pieces that you would want as a trusted adult in your kid's life who he could build a relationship with, because he seems to look up, but we don't want him going all the way to adulthood, because we've seen generations of evidence that when kids identify with adults as young kids, they do miss some of those pieces along the way. So a middle ground aged person who to Tucker seems much older might be a great gateway. And then you also have the ability to ask this kid, okay, one of the things we're working on right now is, do you think you can like cultivate some play opportunities?
Oh, I love that, because we have a 10-year-old down the block who is a great brother and treats Tucker like a brother and is just so tender with him. And they actually took a Power Wheel out, and his mom was like, I trust him. And I said, I do too. That's why I haven't moved.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I just had an idea. An experience reward could be special time with him.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that would be cool. Okay.
2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Especially when baby comes.
Yes. Well, and I had already put it in the mom's mind of like, hey, he might be a really good influence for Tucker as to how to be a big brother. And so that's already out there. Awesome. I like that. And they have a middle daughter who probably could be another like level down to help. Also, she loves Tucker too. Because those are the kids he grew up with in essence, because they would see him, outside and run up, even though we had to keep our distance with COVID. Like those were the kids that he knew existed. And so we can see him starting to break some of the walls around them, but it's slow.
Yeah. But a trusted enough connection where it's possible. Yeah. And then long term, you can use those relationships as models, right? So if Tucker's really struggling with Lulu at school, you say, wow, the way that you and boy from down the road talk about this, that could be a great way for you to ask Lulu why it's so hard for her to share the red crayon, right? So you could take from healthy relationship and ask him to use that and apply to scary, for lack of a better word, relationship building.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Because he does. He's like, we used to joke that he's the mayor because he would wave and say hi to everybody. The one word he had. But kids know. So that's a great kind of stepping stone, because he also related to the teenage babysitters we have. He loves them.
Yes. Is there one kid in his preschool program that you think could be the break-in space?
Oh, for sure. Jack. He lives just on the block, and they're like buddies. They sit on the bus together, and I know that they talk on the bus.
Okay.
So I know that is there, and they did a play date a couple weeks ago.
Did you ask at school what the interactions look and sound like between the two of them there?
I didn't. But they did give me names of other students that they thought would be a good break-in.
Okay.
To do play dates with, including Jack. But I didn't ask at school. I can ask though, that's easy.
Super curious, right? When we talk about watching kids, how they interact in the different spaces of their life. I mean, even when it comes to play dates, a play date at your house, you interact very differently than a play date at the other person's house. And so, what Tucker's asking of you and your husband is to strip this social interaction science stuff down to its very barest level.
Yeah.
And just allow it to be in short periods of time, in safe, observed, and organized spaces, and then celebrate the heck out of it afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why, like, he actually did the play date at Jack's house without me, but had the nanny there.
Yeah.
They said the mom of Jack said that he was very bashful, but eventually warmed up. I'm like, okay, well, we got there.
And good for you. Like, everyone who's listening to this, I want you all to give a cheer for Jamie right now, because I did an episode recently. I don't know if it's dropped yet, about when we put kids intentionally in safe spaces of resistance is how they find their true selves and practice resilience. And that's what you did by saying, I'm not going to go. That's a hard thing to do, right? Because all you want to do is like support them and keep them safe and successful.
Well,
and
I want to hang out with his mom too.
And you want to hang out with mom. But you knew that the priority was Tucker being inside that slightly uncomfortable experience and getting through it on his own.
Yeah. Well, because it's interesting. I was just talking to my therapist, because I think everybody should have a therapist. I'm just put it out there. And as we were talking about this, it was right after the parent-teacher conference. And I had this moment of like, oh my gosh, I intuitively knew that about myself. Because my mom would tell me stories later. She would be like, people would go, but Jamie's shy. Why would she want to go to basketball camp by herself? I was like, I don't know, but I'm not going to question it. And I think intuitively, I knew I had to put myself in slightly uncomfortable situations in order to break out of my shell, and break out of the stereotype, the labeling of being shy.
Right.
And so I constantly did that for most of my teen years, and probably early teens too. My parents didn't connect that. And I didn't connect it until now, where I was like, oh, that's what I was doing. So I'm trying to do that same thing with Tucker now, where it's like, okay, I can foster this for you, so that, because he's an outgoing kid. I mean, our neighbor next door, he's like, he'll run up to and start talking to, and the poor neighbors, I'm busy right now, but like, so I know it's there. It's just, okay, how do we start to nurture it so that he realizes that there is a safe space?
Absolutely. And I love how you're talking about that nature piece. You know, I'm obsessed with nature versus nurture, and that you intuitively knew how to tap into yours, and that his is a different makeup. It's a different nature DNA, and that you've got to push in certain spaces and pull back in others to help him get there. The other cool thing about Tucker, and I know this is true for so many parents and teachers listening of the kids they work with, is a lot of them are wait and watch and process. And we start to lose patience, right? We want the instant gratification of seeing them accomplish the thing, but they're just they're waiting and watching and processing and plotting and working on their confidence and almost doing it, but not quite. And then all of a sudden, pop, just like with the language. Explosion. And so my prediction is that with the intentional work that you're doing, and that these wonderful teachers are doing in this preschool, that between now and 9 months from now, you're all going to be going, can you believe that kid? Yeah. We were so worried, and look at him now.
Yeah. Well, and he gets I'm an observer. My husband is a little bit too, but I'm one of those people who soaks in, and then I go, oh, so this is what's happening. This is where so he gets a little bit of that from me too. So yeah, that makes sense. So
you know what's crazy is that we hopped on to record something and really dive deep into reward charts. But what's always happens is that we take this solution, right? We started solution first.
Yeah.
And we reverse engineered back to the human component. And that is always where we need to start. So we've talked about reward charts. We've talked about social, emotional, interpersonal skills. And I really hope, well, that you're walking away with some sense of ease and calm and a plan, and that everyone who's listening was able to take something from this too.
Oh, 100%. I feel a lot more confident in applying the technique that was suggested, the solution that was suggested, because now that we've uncovered it and broke it down more, I'm like, oh, this makes more sense. This how to apply it makes sense. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Oh, to all of you out there who are just so focused on doing the big intentional work of raising our next generation, stay mindful and proactive until our next episode as we transform the toddler years.